Hi, my name is Hannah Hentz. I'm a senior at the Pennsylvania State University, majoring in secondary education with a focus in biological sciences, and this is my final project submission for Biol448. So the plant that I chose to do for this project was Sassafras albidum, and the reason I chose the sassafras tree was because of this Indian folktale that my uncle once told me. My family's very close and we spend a lot of time together. And he used to be a scoutmaster for the Boy Scouts of America. And he once told me a story about the sassafras tree based on the leaves. So one really cool thing that I love about the sassafras tree is there are 3 different kinds of leaves on the trees. So he told me the folktale based on those leaves, and it really stuck with me, and I thought it was really cool, so it became one of my favorite plants, and that's how I decided to do it for this project. So the common name of Sassafras albidum is the common sassafras, which is pretty easy. It's from the Lauraceae family, I think. I kind of butchered that a little. It is an angiosperm, and its growth form, I already mentioned, is a tree. Life history, it is an annual sprouting, an annual bloom, and it likes to grow in deciduous forest habitats, specifically in eastern North America and then down through the south a little bit. The bordering states are southwestern Maine, down through New York, southern Ontario, central Michigan, eastern Oklahoma, Texas, and Florida. So as you can see in this picture here, and then all of my sources are on the bottom, but they're also in my outline that I will be submitting. So as you can see here, I know it's backwards, but all the green spots are where you will find the sassafras tree. So it is an iteraparis plant, meaning that it doesn't save up all its energy and just do one big reproduction process. It is an annual cycle that the tree goes through. Sexual and gender systems. The Sassafras albidum is a dioecious plant, meaning that there are male and female flowers, and those are located on separate trees. So you will have male trees and female trees. This means that they can't self, they have to do crossing between the male and female trees. And once that crossing is completed, for that crossing to occur, the greenish yellow flowers must appear on the trees. Those appear in March and April as leaves begin to unfold, and then those flowers will be produced in loose drooping clusters, as opposed to some that are like single flowers. All the flowers for the sassafras are clustered together. And then those flowers are pollinated by insects. That's the pollination mechanism that it goes through. And then once that occurs, the seed dispersal mechanism takes place. Seed production begins when the tree is about 10 years old. So although I did say it is iteraparis, once it gets to about 10 years of age is when you're going to start getting bigger and better seed yields. So the greatest seed yields actually occur for the sassafras between 25 and 50 years old. And you'll really only get a good seed crop about every 2 years. So even though it will go through the same cycle every year, you're really only going to get a good amount of seeds every 2 years. Those seeds, after they're produced, are then dispersed by birds such as quails, wild turkeys, kingbirds, crested flycatchers, mockingbirds, sapsuckers, pileated woodpeckers, yellow-throated warblers, and phoebes, which I actually didn't know was a bird. And then they can also be dispersed by water, and then later in the summer they can also be dispersed by small mammals. So anything that's left behind can be dispersed by those mammals. Flowers, typically, I mentioned them a little bit before, they appear in March and April as the leaves begin to unfold and they develop into clusters. And then the fruit tends to be about 8 to 13 millimeters long, single-seeded, and then the seed is actually protected by a dark blue berry, which I have a picture of. And then that berry is attached to a red stalk-like structure. Those fruits begin to mature in August and September. The pulpy flesh covers the seed, so that's that dark blue, blueberry-ish form. And then fruit production is actually pretty sporadic. It doesn't always occur on every section of the tree, and it always doesn't necessarily occur on every tree. It's a little more sporadic as opposed to the flower production. So once that fruit does become mature, it's typically quickly eaten by the birds that I mentioned earlier. So that was everything that was required on the rubric, but I wanted to add a couple little interesting fun facts that I thought would be good to add in, make the video a little bit longer. So one of the first things that I found when I was doing my research for this project was a lot of information about laurel wilt and how it affects Sassafras albidum. So laurel wilt is actually an insect and pathogen relationship, a symbiotic relationship that affects trees. And basically what happens is the Raphaela loricola, that's the pathogen. And then the red ambrosia beetle, I can pronounce that one at least. The red ambrosia beetle, they are the two that have the relationship. Both are native to Asia, but were actually discovered in the United States in 2002. I believe in Georgia is where that discovery was made. It's since spread, but I'm pretty sure they found it in Georgia. So basically what happens is the red ambrosia beetle will attack lariaceous tree species. So the sassafras was the one that I was focused on, obviously, but also species such as the red bay tree. And then what happens is the beetles, the red ambrosia beetle, will bore into the bark and the branches of the trees. And they do that as part of their reproduction tactic. They lay their eggs in there, and that's where the eggs develop. And when they actually bore those holes, that's when the pathogen is introduced to the tree. And then the tree tries to combat against that pathogen in a defensive way, obviously, because it's a pathogen. And then consequently, the tree will end up wilting and dying. So it doesn't really work out well for the tree, but the beetle and the pathogen get what they were looking for, so circle of life. Another interesting thing that I found about the Sassafras albidum is that the roots used to be used for tea, and the leaves used to be used for flavoring root beer. And unfortunately, the USDA discontinued that after there was found to be carcinogenic properties. Wonderful. Carcinogenic properties in the sassafras parts that were being used for those products. But the good news is that the wood of the sassafras tree is still good to use, and it is actually used quite often for boats and furniture. And the reason for that is, even though it's a softer wood, it's very durable. So the tree does get used for that. And it's also considered to be very ornate and pretty. For some people like to use it as decoration when it's not being found in the woods. I've never seen one like locally, but supposedly people like to do that. So that was my project and my research that I found about the Sassafras albidum. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I covered everything you were looking for. Dr. Lasky, thank you for a great semester. I really enjoyed your course, and I hope you have a happy holiday. Thanks. Bye.